It's 6:23. Welcome back, and it's time to take a look at your money. So breaking just hours ago, the White House and China have announced an initial agreement in their ongoing trade dispute. It's been a busy week on the global trade front. On Thursday, President Donald Trump announced a trade agreement has been struck with the United Kingdom. And this past weekend, officials from the Trump administration also held their first formal trade talks with Chinese representatives in Geneva, Switzerland. Now, that's what led to the deal announced overnight. And financial advisor Mark Ravicheski is joining us now on Zoom to break it down for us. Good morning, Mark. Always great to have you.
Great to be here again, Abe. But yeah, busy 5 days on the trade front.
Yeah, so first off, what are some of the specifics behind this agreement with the United Kingdom?
Yeah, this was more of kind of like a sector-oriented trade agreement, and with the exception of China, I think it's how a lot of these trade agreements are going to be structured. The UK agreed to buy a lot more, ethanol, beef, agricultural products. It helped shore up supply chains for the U.S. aerospace and pharmaceutical industries, but it also kind of reduced a lot of those, barriers and bureaucracy to help kind of streamline that flow of U.S. goods into the U.K.
Well, this morning we're getting some breaking news out of Geneva, Switzerland. We were just talking about that. An agreement has been struck with China. What are some of the details behind this agreement?
Both the White House and China agreed to a 90-day pause where they will substantially lower their tariffs. The U.S. will lower its tariffs on Chinese goods from 145% down to 30%, while China will lower its tariff on U.S. goods from 125% to just 10%. Now, both the White House and China have yet to announce any other specifics on this agreement, but it does mark a substantial de-escalation in this ongoing dispute. However, I don't think this marks a final deal, but rather, more of a start of continued negotiations.
And Mark, what are some of the concessions President Donald Trump is trying to get out of China?
Well, look, the key thing with China is that the issues are a lot more complex than China simply agreeing to buy more U.S. goods from, specific sectors. One of the biggest issues is getting unfettered access to China's marketplace. Look, for decades, American companies have complained that to operate in China, they're required to turn over their intellectual property, such as patents and technology, to the Chinese government. And then there's technology that's acquired by outright theft. And what's the big technology at risk right now in the United States? It's artificial intelligence. But also, China heavily subsidizes many of its industries, whether it's steel, aluminum, cell phones, heavy machinery. So if you're a U.S. company trying to sell your goods in China, these government subsidies essentially allow Chinese companies to sell their products at a price that's very difficult to compete with. And U.S. companies argue that those subsidies essentially restrict access to China's 1.4 billion consumers.
And Mark, what impact on consumer prices can we expect to see over the next 90 days?
Well, again, tariffs are essentially taxes imposed on specific goods that are imported from specific countries. So in this case, if the tariff on Chinese goods is reduced from 145% down to 30%, that's going to reduce the price consumers are going to pay for those items. However, if those Chinese goods have already entered the United States, more than likely they have that 145% tariff attached to them. Now, as Chinese goods start to, enter the country, those goods will have that lower tariff. So, in the short term, Devin, you might see this mix of some Chinese goods having 145% tariff and some having just a 30% tariff.
I'm sure that's what a lot of people at home are thinking about, right?
Yeah.
Very important information, especially for consumers like us. So thank you so much, Mark, and we'll see you next Monday.
All right. Have a great week, you two. Take care.